Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
That is not the one. Maybe it's a different cloud. That is not the one. It's an old one, maybe. Yeah, it's coming from Chicago.
Hare Krishna. No.
Turn it off.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Let's sing. I will sing maybe.
1 second.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
I think we should be good.
Anita wanted to sing, right?
Huh?
Anita wanted to
So, yeah, they have to
sing.
start taking some.
Yeah.
You don't play? No, Karta? You can play Karta? Define Karta.
I think Krishna will have Kartan.
Because we are running late.
Oh.
Yes.
Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vikhadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vikhadi Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tiravanachadi Jamuna Tiravanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pariviragacharya Astatarasatasi Simad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. There's a great space for gatherings. Did you purchase the house with use of this space in mind? Or some things like this? Gatherings? Yeah? Maybe? Yes? Years ago, like maybe 30-something years ago, we were reaching out to do college preaching at Brown University, which is in Providence, Rhode Island. So we bought a house for our preachers, but we wanted to have a space for gathering. And there was a basement space, a finished basement space, but to be within the laws of the city, we had to have a fire escape. So we had to have one of those. So we built one of those. We, knocked a hole in the wall and built some stairs going down from the ground level, and so we could assemble together legally. They did some nice preaching at Brown University. It was a few years ago, probably 40 years ago. And it wasn't this big, and not even close. Little space, but good enough for the college. So do you two need a little introduction to Lord Chaitanya? Because we're going to read something about Lord Chaitanya's life. A little background will help, right? Okay. Tomorrow we're observing the Appearance Day. It's the Purnima. I don't know if you noticed the moon last night. It was almost full. It's like going to be a big one, this Purnima. He appeared on a full moon night. Lord Chaitanya appeared on a full moon night when there was a lunar eclipse. And as was the tradition, when there is a lunar eclipse, to go to the sacred Ganges and call out the names of the Lord very loudly while the eclipse is going on. So on that auspicious evening, by the banks of the river Ganges, with everyone calling out loudly the names of Hari and Krishna, Lord Chaitanya made his appearance. Lord Chaitanya, like Krishna, appear, according to the Vedic texts, once in a day of Brahma, and that's a long time. The day of Brahma is 1,000 cycles of the 4 yugas. And the 4 yugas alone, 1,000 of those, is 4,320,000. So once 4,320,000 of our solar years, Krishna appears. And Krishna appears towards the end of the Dwapara Yuga. And then in the Kali Yuga that follows that which Krishna appears, Lord Chaitanya appears. And the understanding goes like this. After Krishna's departure, this is found right within the biography of Lord Chaitanya's life, where after Krishna's departure, he was considering, I came to this world for 3 things, according to Bhagavad Gita. Pritranaya sadhunam, give protection to the sadhus, to the devotees. Vinashaya chaduskatam, to admonish or eliminate the duskritis, the demons. Krishna appeared to kill the demons at the request of Mother Earth and the demigods. And the third reason was to reestablish principles of Dharma. Dharma sangstha panarthaya. Sambhavami yuge yuge. So Krishna was considering, I gave the Dharma from in Bhagavad Gita. That is, all other principles are subordinate to this one. They're pursuant to this one. What's that? Mam ekam sharanam. Sharanam means surrender. To surrender unto me alone. However, in this age of Kali, people are not going to understand how to. So I need to teach them how to. He could have, and he decided, I will come myself. So Krishna himself appeared in the following yuga, Kali Yuga, following his Dwapara Yuga pastimes, to teach how to surrender to Krishna, how to fulfill that dharmic principle, under which all other dharmas are subordinate. So that's who Lord Chaitanya is. Krishna himself, in the mood of a devotee of himself, in the mood of devotee of Vishnu or Krishna, Vaishnav devotee, he appeared in a Brahmin family in now West Bengal, near the bank of the river Ganges. And he taught how to. Now, in the course of his teaching, he had these 2 sides. One side was that of a devotee, but he's also the Supreme Lord. And largely, during his childhood pastimes, very similar to Krishna's pastimes, his divinity was not recognized by the residents of Vrindavan. They just saw him as their beloved son or their dear friend or their lover. Or something. They saw him not as God, the Supreme. They didn't see that way. But in course of time, he exhibited like lifting Govardhan Hill and other things that showed people he is in fact God. And in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, he similarly, his youthful pastimes were that of a Brahmin scholar. He was like super scholar. And he was really feisty. He would challenge people and defeat them and confront them. And so he was known for his scholarship, but kind of like, stop challenging people all the time. And boy, if this young man were to become a devotee, then the life of Vaishnava teachings will spread widely. So he became a devotee in gradual steps, which we heard already, by association with Vaishnav, who came to visit in the place where he took birth, and engaged him in hearing his talks about Krishna, engaged him in some service, etc., etc., etc. And then gradually, he received mantra diksha. And when he received mantra diksha, it was an explosion. His life of devotion took off. And so that's where we're reading from. The student pastimes is one section, Adi Kanda. And then from initiation, it becomes Madhya Kanda, till he takes sannyas, and then Antya Kanda. So we're reading somewhere in the middle of Madhya Kanda, where his teachings about the chanting of the holy name, because that's another purpose of his appearance. Lord Chaitanya came early in this age of Kali to establish the primary means for achieving spiritual perfection, called Yuga Dharma. That's congregational chanting of the holy names of God. And all scriptures of all religions of the world teach the importance of calling God's name. So he gave that teaching, and he demonstrated it by his own. As a school teacher, because he was still young. When the age that we're talking about now is he's around 18 in his worldly pastimes. He's married. You know, in those days, young men, young girls became married early. He has no children, but he's still a teacher. And everyone loves him. The Vaishnavas love him. And the worldly people, they objected to, the chanting. It was too much. And so in different ways they would criticize. But those who were engaged in the chanting, they were so absorbed in chanting, ecstatic chanting, that they were unfazed. So now that what we're reading right now, this midday class, the day before Lord Chaitanya's appearance tomorrow, Purnima day, he's going to perform a pastime where every evening the Vaishnavas would gather together at the house of Srivas Pandit. Srivas Pandit was one of four brothers. They lived kind of like in an extended family situation, all very, very learned, very elevated personalities, worshippers of their Shalagram Shilas, and engaged in all Brahminical duties very nicely. And in the evening, they would come together after their day's activity for chanting. And the chanting became really ecstatic. And it got to the point where it wasn't just an evening get-together, it would go on all evening until the sunrise the next morning. So that's where we are. And this chapter is titled The Lord's 21-Hour Ecstasy, and descriptions of Shraddha and other devotee characteristics. So the scene is the time period is in the early 1500s, rural, but it's a community of scholarly people, largely. Navadvip at that time was a stronghold of Brahmanas doing Brahminical study and teaching, and that was, it's along with the agriculture that was going on otherwise, very strong Brahminical community. So they would gather, amongst the Brahmanas, some were Vaishnavas, so they would gather together at Srivas's home, and suddenly Nimai Pandit, this 18-year-old person that everyone has great affection for, took on the mood of the Supreme Lord. So his mood as a devotee of the Supreme Lord flipped, and he entered in an ecstatic mood of the Supreme Lord. And he sits on the altar, says here the throne. He sat on Lord Vishnu's altar, and and called for the devotees to come and worship him and so forth. He was showing his divinity to all the devotees that were seeing him as a devotee. And they weren't shocked. They were like really happy, more than happy. They became totally ecstatic. And the style of the writing, this is an English translation of Bengali writing, that's very spontaneous. It's not explaining things, in terms of scriptural references, why this and why that. It's just outpourings of his heart. He's that kind of person, scholarly enough to write very poetically and very beautifully and elegantly, but he's on the spontaneous platform. He doesn't really bother to help new people or, non-devotee people to understand what's going on. He's just pouring his heart out. And it's important, two things important. The author's name is Vrindavan Das, and Vrindavan Das, his was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first biographies, and he's very clearly asserting the divinity, not just of this young Brahmin, who later became a exalted sannyasi. He's seeing him as the personality of Godhead, Narayan, very clearly, repeatedly. So that became, and at least through his writing, he was establishing that's his view, which was accepted by many. And the other is there's events that sound really fantastic, like really, and during his time and presently, at least the followers of Lord Chaitanya accept it as authorized or authentic, not just some wild exaggeration kind of talk of an over-exuberant person, but actual events that took place, historical record of event that took place. So here we go. All glories to Gora. Gora means golden. Lord Chaitanya was Gauranga, golden limbs. All glories to Gora, the Lord of the entire universe, who disguised himself by wearing the dress of a sannyasi. Later he became. All glories to Sri Chaitanya, the son of Jagannath and Shachi. All glories to Gaura Sundara, who inaugurated the glorious Sankirtan movement. All glories to the Lord, who is the life of Nityananda and Gadadhar. Now, in earlier chapters, who these personalities are identified. So if you don't recognize the names, it's quite okay. Nityananda and Gadadhar. All glories to the life and wealth of Advaita and Srivas. All glories to the life of Jagatananda and Haridas. All glories to the Lord, who is the abode of Akreshwara and Pundarik's love. All glories to the dear Lord of Vasudev and Sri Garbha. O Lord, please glance mercifully on the living entities. All glories to Gauranga along with his devotees. By hearing topics about Lord Chaitanya, one obtains devotional service. O brothers, please hear attentively the topics of Madhya Khanda regarding how Gaurachandra Mahaprabhu enjoyed his pastimes. Hear about Lord Chaitanya's Mahaprakash, Mahaprakash, or great revelation. Prakash, manifest, Mahaprakash. Great revelation, during which all the Vaishnavas obtained fulfillment of their desires. This pastime is widely known as Tata Parihari Prahariya Bhav. Tata Prahariya Bhava, or the 21-hour ecstasy. So this goes on for non-stop, 21 hours. During this period, the Lord manifests his various incarnations. Now, it said earlier chapters, this is resting on knowledge from the Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavatam, there's an understanding of what are the various avatars of Vishnu. Canto 1, Chapter 3, and a similar description in Cantos 2, Bhagavatam. But in the Bhagavatam, it says, of all these incarnations, one is the source of them all. Or within this one, all incarnations reside, and they manifest originating from that original source. According to the Bhagavatam, that original source is Krishna himself. Bhagavan Sri Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan, Ekas, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. So, Lord Chaitanya being Krishna himself, within Lord Chaitanya, all avatars are resting, and from time to time in earlier chapters, he would manifest different, not just moods, but he would manifest the form, and the mood, and the Leela of Lord Varaha, and sometimes Lord Nrsingadev. People would run, because anyway, that he would manifest these different features. And the residents, the close associates of Lord Chaitanya, they had the opportunity to experience these things. During this pastime, the Lord ate wonderfully, manifested wonderful forms, and awarded the devotional service of Vishnu to one and all. On that day, the devotees gave the Lord Abhishek as the king of all kings. That was the prelude. One day, Sri Gaura Sundara Mahaprabhu came to the house of Srivas Pandit. He was accompanied by the most restless Nityananda Chandra. Nityananda in Krishna Lila is Balaram, Nityananda Ram. And when he appeared with Lord Chaitanya, he was elder, like Balaram was elder to Krishna. Only Nityananda was elder by several years, not just some number of days. And he behaved like an avadut. He behaved without consideration of external formalities, social custom. He just was totally, not just spontaneous, but totally not taking into account social custom. So he would behave like an avaduta. And sometimes wild, sometimes very calm, sometimes standing still, motionless. Different moods of ecstatic love. Gradually, the devotees gathered there. That's at the house of Srivas. The heart of Gauranga Mahaprabhu was absorbed in ecstasy. Manifesting his supreme opulences, he looked in the four directions. Understanding the indication of the Lord, the devotees began loud kirtan from all sides. On other days, the Lord would dance in the mood of a servant, and would only momentarily manifest his opulences before withdrawing them. While dancing on this day, however, the Lord made all the devotees fortunate by going up and sitting on the throne of Lord Vishnu. On other days, when the Lord had manifested his ecstasy and sat on the throne of Vishnu, he had acted like he was unaware of his actions. But during this, we'll just, Shata Pari Prahariya Bhava, 21-hour ecstasy, the Lord gave up all pretension and revealed his glories for 21 hours. All the devotees felt great ecstasy as they stood before the Lord with folded hands. How wonderful were their feelings of satisfaction. Everyone felt like they were enjoying in Vaikuntha. The Lord also sat like the Lord of Vaikuntha. Not even a tinge of illusion was present there. The Lord ordered, "Recite the prayers for my Abhishek." On hearing this, the devotees happily recited, because this is a community of Brahmins, so they knew all the prayers. They began reciting. On hearing the Abhishek prayers, the Lord rolled his head and without duplicity glanced mercifully on everyone. The devotees understood the Lord's indication and decided to perform Abhishek ceremony. Like we do with deities, only he's fully dressed young man. All the devotees brought Ganges water and strained it with fine, clean cloth. Thereafter, they joyfully prepared Abhishek by mixing camphor and 4 other ingredients in the water. The tumultuous sound of Jaya, Jaya was heard in the 4 directions as everyone began to recite the Abhishek mantras. First, Sri Nityananda chanted Jaya, Jaya as he happily poured water on the head of the Lord. Exalted devotees, headed by Advaita and Srivas, bathed the Lord while reciting the Purusha Sukta mantras. The devotees of Gauranga were expert in chanting mantras. As they recited mantras, they joyfully poured water on the Lord. The devotees headed by Mukunda sang auspicious Abhishek songs. Mukunda is one of his devotees who is about the same age as Lord Chaitanya, and he's celebrated for being like a super singer in Krishna's pastimes. Krishna had 2 cowherd boyfriends that were really, really good at singing. And in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, one of them was Mukunda. Mukunda Datta and his brother Vasudev Datta, really good singers. So they were singing Abhishek songs. Some devotees cried, some danced, and some simply became overwhelmed in ecstasy. The chaste women made auspicious sounds as everyone's hearts filled with ecstasy. The Lord of Vaikuntha sat on the throne as all the devotees poured water on his head. As a formality, there was supposed to be 108 pots of water, but thousands of pots of water could not actually hold all that water. The fortunate demigods assumed the forms of human beings and secretly took part in the Abhishek ceremony. If one offers even a drop of water at the lotus feet of the Lord in meditation, what to speak of directly, he is never subjected to the punishment of Yamaraj. That Lord was now directly accepting water from everyone. The servants and maidservants of Srivas brought water and also bathed the Lord. This is the result of serving the devotees, meaning service to the Lord is one thing. Service to the devotees of those who are servants of the Lord is awards the same benediction. So the housemaids and whatever, they had the same opportunity of coming before the Lord and bathing him. Most merciful. One most fortunate maidservant named Dukhi. Dukhi means she was distressed. Brought water for the Lord, who engaged her by saying, "Bring, bring." On seeing her devotional service, the Lord changed her name from Dukhi to Sukhi, one who is happy. She became very happy. All the devotees bathed the Lord while chanting various Vedic mantras, and then they dried his body. Thereafter, they dressed him in new cloth and applied fragrant sandalwood paste on his transcendental body. They cleansed Vishnu's throne, and the Lord then sat down on it. Lord Nityananda held an umbrella over the Lord's head, and some fortunate soul fanned him with a chamara. Then all the devotees began to offer various items of worship at the lotus feet of their Lord. They offered water for washing the feet, auspicious ingredients to the hand, water for washing the mouth, sandalwood paste, flowers, incense, lamps, foodstuffs, and cloth. According to their capacity, they offered Brahmana thread, clothes, and ornaments. In this way, they worshipped the Lord with 16 ingredients. The devotees dipped tulsi manjaris in sandalwood paste and repeatedly offered them at the lotus feet of the Lord. After worshipping the Lord according to the rules and regulations prescribed for chanting the 10-syllable Gopal mantra, they offered prayers. All the Lord's principal associates, headed by Advaita, fell at the Lord's feet and offered obeisances. Advaita is of a similar age as Lord Chaitanya, very elderly. Often we see him pictured with a beard, white hair and a beard. Advaita Acharya was involved in calling for Lord Chaitanya's descent. According to Scripture, it says in Scripture, one who worships their shalagram with sincere prayer, offering palmfuls of water and tulsis, then the Lord will hear the prayer and reciprocate. So his prayer was for the Lord to descend. That's Advaita Acharya. So he is involved in all this activity. Tears of love flowed from the eyes of the devotees. The Lord sincerely listened as they offered the following prayers, quote, "All glories to the Lord of all universes. Please glance mercifully on the living entities who are afflicted with the threefold material miseries. All glories to the original cause and Father of everyone. All glories to the Lord who has incarnated to inaugurate the Sankirtana movement. All glories to the protector of Vedic principles and saintly persons. All glories to the Lord who gives life to everyone, from Brahma to the non-moving living entities. All glories to the reservoir of transcendental qualities and the deliverer of the fallen souls. All glories to the supreme shelter and the friend of the poor." There's a few more glories coming up. All glories to the cowherd boy who lives in the ocean of milk. All glories to the Lord who manifests his pastimes for the sake of his devotees. All glories to the Lord who is the inconceivable, unfathomable, and original truth. All glories to the Lord who is the most gentle form of pure goodness. All glories to the Lord who is the ornament and deliverer of the Brahmana community. All glories to the Lord who is the life and soul of all, including the Vedic principles. All glories to the deliverer of the fallen Ajamila. All glories to him who liberated Putana of her sins. And last, all glories to him who does not see the faults of others and who is the beloved Lord of Lakshmi. In this way, all the exalted devotees offered their prayers. Seeing the supreme manifestation of the Lord's form, all the servants merged in an ocean of bliss. Lord Gaurachandra spontaneously extended his lotus feet, which were worshipped by all the devotees. Someone brought fragrant sandalwood paste, which he smeared on those lotus feet. Someone else offered tulsi manjaris in worship. Someone offered ornaments made of gold, silver, and gems at his lotus feet, and then offered obeisances. Everyone offered obeisances, while white, blue, and yellow silk cloth were offered at the Lord's lotus feet. They offered various types of metal containers. No one knew how many people fell at his lotus feet. The lotus feet that all living entities, beginning with Brahma, Lakshmi, and Shiva, desire to worship were now being worshipped by the servants and maidservants of the Vaishnavas. This is the result of serving the Vaishnavas. They fearlessly offered fresh grass paddy at the lotus feet of the Lord. Some of them brought various kinds of fruits, which they offered at his lotus feet, while some offered sandalwood paste and flowers at the Lord's lotus feet. Someone was inspired to worship with 16 ingredients, while someone was inspired to worship with 6 ingredients. Everyone joyfully offered musk, kumkum, camphor, and red powder at the Lord's lotus feet. Those lotus feet and toenails were decorated with various flowers such as champak, malika, kunda, kadamba, and malati. As the crest jewel of Vaikuntha manifested his opulence, he said, "Give me something to eat." As the devotees saw the Lord extend his palm, all the devotees saw the Lord extend his palm. Whatever the devotees offered, the Lord ate. Someone offered bananas. Someone offered soaked mung dal. Others offered yogurt, condensed milk, butter, and milk. The devotees gave all these items directly into the hands of Mahaprabhu, who sincerely ate everything. Everyone ran from street to street and bought the finest items, which they quickly brought back to the Lord. Someone mixed coconut pulp with sugar and placed it directly in the Lord's hands. They brought an abundance of variety of various sweets, which the Lord took in his hands and ate. Some offered sweets made of fused rice, rose, apple, and cucumbers. Some offered sugar cane, and others offered Ganges water on seeing the Lord's ecstatic manifestation. Some servants offered 5 or 10 times. Hundreds of people offered water, all of which was drunk by the master of all mystic perfections. They offered thousands of pots of yogurt, condensed milk, and milk, thousands of bunches of bananas, and large quantities of soaked mung dal. They offered large quantities of sweetmeats, fruits, and roots, and thousands of containers filled with betel nuts and camphor. Such was the unprecedented opulence manifested by Gaurachandra. Devotees could not understand how the Lord ate everything. The Lord happily ate the foodstuffs offered by his devotees, and then began to describe their birth and activities. There was a similar pastime in that happened in Puri. I mean, not totally identical, but when Lord Chaitanya, after Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, his mother requested him to don't go to Vrindavan, please go to Puri. You want to be with Krishna, but Krishna is in Puri also in the form of Jagannath. And from Bengal, every year for Jagannath Rath Yatra, the devotees from Bengal go. And when they come back, then I can at least get word of you. If you go to Vrindavan, who knows if I'll even hear. We don't have text messages yet. So he went to Puri. And when the devotees from Bengal would go for Rath Yatra, to attend Rath Yatra, they would bring cooked items and dried items and all kinds of items. And they would give those items to Lord Chaitanya's personal assistant. His name was Govinda. And Govinda received them. And then, you know how people are that do something like that. They want to know, did he eat it? Did he like it? You know. So they would ask him. And Lord Chaitanya hadn't eaten any of it. And he didn't want to put some pressure on Lord Chaitanya, but he was getting pressure from the other side. So finally he blurted it out. People want to know. And Lord Chaitanya said, well, bring everything. And he ate everything. And it was a lot. It was more than a person can normally consume. Except for, this is just nice, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Damayanti, one of his devotee Mataji personalities, was really expert at making things that wouldn't go bad. She knew how to do it, make things dry and so forth, and put them in bags. Raghava Pandit was her husband, and so it's called in Bengali language Raghavera Jali, or the bags of Raghava Pandit. So he kept them in one place, and he didn't eat. But then slowly he would eat and relish the cooking of the preparations made by Damayanti, and didn't go bad. Anyway, he could eat nothing or eat everything, and it's because his form wasn't spiritual. Excuse me, it wasn't material, fully spiritual. So how could he eat? How could he not eat? How could he? When you have a spiritual form, how can you do anything or not do anything? It's a whole different set of rules. He was exhibiting his divinity in a variety of ways, and this was one of them. So people brought everything, and he ate everything. So the next phase is, after they did all this, the abhishek and the ornament, the bringing food, it's like deity worship. So what comes after the deity worship? He's going to reciprocate with them by having one by one personal exchanges with different devotees who he would call by name and disclose who they are in their eternal positions, their spiritual position. And they would be in shock, and everyone would chant Jai, Jai. It's that very, very warm, personal, affectionate exchange. And again, this went on for 21 hours. Not just this part, but the whole pastime. The Lord happily ate the foodstuffs offered by his devotees and then began to describe their birth and activities. As a result, each devotee remembered his previous activities and joyfully fell to the ground crying. The Lord said to Srivas, "O Srivas, do you remember when you once heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Devananda Pandit? Every line of Srimad Bhagavatam is full of loving devotional mellows, and your heart melted on hearing that narration. You began to cry loudly and fell to the ground, overwhelmed with ecstasy. Not understanding your devotional sentiments, the foolish students of Devananda Pandit could not understand why you were crying. You lost external consciousness while exhibiting transformations of ecstatic love. And the students carried you outside. Devananda did not stop them. As the Guru was ignorant, so were his disciples. When they left you outside the door, you returned home greatly distressed. Feeling unhappy at heart, you sat down in a solitary place and again began to read Srimad Bhagavatam. Seeing your distress, I left Vaikuntha and appeared in your body. Then I sat in your heart and made you cry by awarding you loving devotion. You became ecstatic by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and the entire area became wet as if by rain." Do you remember that, Srivas? Realizing the words of the Lord, Srivas became overwhelmed. He rolled on the ground, cried, and sighed deeply. In this way, the Lord reminded all the Vaishnavas headed by Advaita about their previous experiences. All the devotees merged in an ocean of bliss as the Lord sat down and ate betel nuts. Some devotees danced. Some devotees engaged in congregational chanting. Others chanted, Jaya, Jaya, Sri Sachinandana. I think I'll go back. Later, after Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, he went to the place where Devananda Pandit resided, and Devananda Pandit fell at Lord Chaitanya's feet, pleading with him for forgiveness for his offense. Lord Chaitanya was very angry. Said, you've suffered because you've offended a great Vaishnava. You have to go to the feet of that great Vaishnava and you beg forgiveness and you'll be delivered. So he did. Devananda Pandit went and appealed to Srivas for forgiveness. Srivas said, there's nothing to forgive. It's all clean slate. It is part of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. Even the persons who are offenders, he relieved them from the reaction of their offense. There's other examples. To one devotee, the Lord said, do you remember the night when I was sitting by your side? In the form of a doctor, I cured your fever. On hearing this, the servant became overwhelmed and fell to the ground. The Lord turned to Gangadas, that was his teacher, and said, do you remember how one night you were running away in fear of the king? You came to the boat Ghat with your entire family, but you feared calamity when no boat could be found. When you could not get a boat throughout the entire night, you became distressed and began to cry. Fearing that the Yavanas would mistreat your family, you resolved to enter the Ganges. At that time, I crossed the Ganges and came before you as a boatman in a ferry. You were pleased to see the boat and began to speak to me with great affection. Oh, brother, please save me at this time. My caste, life, wealth, and my body all belong to you. Protect me. Take me and my family across the river. I will pay you the 1 coin and give you 2 coins as a donation. Thereafter, I took you and your family across the river and then returned to Vaikuntha. On hearing these words, Gangadas floated in an ocean of bliss. Such are the pastimes of Lord Gaurasundar. While crossing the Ganges, you remembered me. Do you remember now that it was I who took you across? After hearing this, Gangadas fell unconscious to the ground. In this way, the Lord honestly narrated the activities of his devotees. The Lord of Vaikuntha sat down. His body was covered with sandalwood paste and flower garlands. One of his dear devotees fanned him, while another dear devotee combed his hair. Another beloved servant offered him betel nuts, while someone danced on his left and some danced before him. In this way, the whole day passed. As the evening arrived, everyone became most jubilant. As the devotees worshipped the Lord's lotus feet with incense and lamps, the sound of conchas, bells, kartals, wampers are the real big ones, and mridangas produced an enchanting atmosphere. As Lord Gaurachandra sat in his full glory, he did not say anything about the devotees' activities. They offered various flowers at his lotus feet and then offered obeisances while saying, "Oh Lord, please protect us." Someone spoke with humility and someone offered praises. Only the sound of ecstatic crying was heard in the 4 directions. What wonderful happiness arose as night fell. Whoever came there felt like they were entering Vaikuntha. In this way, the Lord manifested his supreme opulences as all his servants stood before him with folded hands. The lion-like Gora happily enjoyed his pastimes while extending his feet and touching the bodies of the devotees. As Sri Gaurasundar was about to give benedictions, all his followers stood before him with folded hands. During this 21-hour ecstasy, the Lord bestowed mercy on everyone without duplicity. He ordered, "Quickly, go bring Sridhar. Let him come and behold my opulences. As he constantly thinks of me, he feels great unhappiness. Bring him at once so that he may see my glories." Now, I'm going to summarize because before coming here to the Maryland area, when I was in Naperville, Chicago suburbs, we discussed this section. I read the section, so I'm just going to summarize it and then read there's a little section. There's 90 verses. I'm just going to summarize. Sridhar, by profession, was a Vaishya. His occupation was selling banana leaves and banana flowers and bananas and banana plates and banana cups, banana products. And, what's the cost involved? They grow on trees. Anyone can get banana leaves and banana flowers. And so, but in the area where his house was, he was very poor. His house had a grass roof that hardly had any grass. So when it rained, it was like having no roof. And his clothes were filled with holes. It's said sometimes his clothes had more holes than clothes. He was, materially speaking, very poor, but very devoted to the Ganges. Of the little bit that he set up his little place by the side of the Ganges, and people would come by and purchase whatever he had. And with whatever he would receive in the course of the day, half he would use for worship of the Ganges, and the other half was his maintenance. And it was half of next to nothing became half of next to nothing. It was very poor. At the same time, he wasn't just a devotee of the Ganges. He was an eternal devotee of Krishna, and in similarly with respect to Lord Chaitanya. His mood of renunciation. It's not the same personality as Krishna's dear friend Sudama, because Sudama was a Brahmin, but Sudama was like ridiculously poor. He was happy being ridiculously poor. And his wife was in some anxiety about how poor they were because he was so skinny. So Sudama's wife persuaded him eventually to go visit Krishna. So the mood of renunciation and you can say external poverty was that of Sridhar. But there was a love between the two that was just amazing. Although in some of their exchanges, Lord Chaitanya was kind of uppity, like a smarty pants brahmana who would demand he give thanks to him for free, even though he was very poor, or bargain on the price, or say to him, "Look, I know you have a great treasure, you're a miser, but I'm not going to disclose your treasure to the world because you had the treasure of love. I won't disclose the fact that you're a miser, but why are you living so poorly?" Anyway, you would just tease him and speak like that way for an hour to two every day, because their loving exchange was unique. And Sridhar would sometimes say, "You're a Brahmin, this isn't appropriate. Look, just take whatever you want and leave me alone. Give me a fair price." So, and on and on and on. It was with love that they would engage together. And so Lord Chaitanya had this kind of love for Sridhar, not by birth or by erudition or anything like that, by his heart. So he said to the devotees, so this is, into the night, go, there's no street lights, there's no flashlights, there's no torches, there's just follow the sound of loud chanting of the holy name, because he would chant all night long, loudly. Just follow the sound and you'll find Sridhar. So they found Sridhar by that method and said, Nimai, Pandit, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to see you, wants you to come at once. So there's such love. He was like touched. He wants to see me. And, he didn't know what was going on. What was going on was this ecstatic mood. So Lord Chaitanya had him brought before him. Immediately, Sridhar paid obeisances, because that was the mood. He was the Lord of Vaikuntha, Narayan, sitting on Vishnu's throne. And Lord Chaitanya ordered him, please ask me for a benediction. I want to give you something. Ask for anything. And Sridhar is saying, no, I don't want anything. I don't want anything. He said, I'll give you a kingdom. I don't want anything. I'll give you all mystic perfections. Tell me what you want. I'll make you Lord of one of the heavenly planets. Tell me what you want. No. I don't want anything. So now I'm going to read. It's really nice. Their love for one another is very wonderful. The Lord said, seeing me cannot be fruitless, you must take some benediction according to your desire. Vishwambhar repeatedly said, I'm reading from 223. Ask. Because Sridhar's already declining many times. He replied, O Lord, then give me this benediction, that Brahmana, that's him, Lord Chaitanya, that Brahmana who forcibly took away my banana leaves be my Lord birth after birth. Let me always engage in the service of the lotus feet of that Brahmana who constantly quarreled with me. While speaking in this way, Sridhar's love for the Lord increased, and he began crying loudly with his arms raised. On seeing Sridhar cry, all the Vaishnavas became overwhelmed and also cried. Vishwambhar smiled and said, listen, Sridhar, I want to make you the king of a great kingdom. Sridhar replied, I don't want anything. Make such arrangement, O Lord, that I may chant your names. The Lord said, O Sridhar, you are my servant. That is why you are able to see my opulences. That is why your mind does not deviate from me. Thus I am giving you devotional service that is confidential to the Vedas. All the Vaishnavas chanted Jai, Jai as they heard the benediction given to Sridhar. He had no wealth, no followers, no education. Who can recognize such servants of Lord Chaitanya? What is the value of education, wealth, beauty, fame, and high birth? They only increase one's pride and bring about one's downfall. In millions of kalpas, Lord Brahma will never see that which Sridhar received simply by selling bananas and banana stems. One who is full of false pride and is envious of the goal of life falls down to an uncertain future. One who ridicules a poor, uneducated, saintly person goes, as a result of his actions, to the hell known as Kumbhipaka. Who has the ability to recognize a Vaishnava? Although a Vaishnava possesses all perfection, he appears to be afflicted. The story of Sridhar, the banana seller, is proof of this, for he accepted only devotional service and rejected the 8 mystic perfections. Know for certain that whatever worldly distress is seen in a Vaishnava is actually spiritual happiness. People blinded with pride over material enjoyment do not know anything. They cannot recognize a Vaishnava due to pride born of education and wealth. Even after studying Srimad Bhagavatam, one's intelligence may be ruined. For anyone who blasphemes Nityananda is certainly vanquished. Anyone who hears the prayers of Sridhar and the benediction he received from the Lord will obtain the wealth of prema, or love of Godhead. And there's a few more verses to the chapter. That's this. Elsewhere it's called the Mahaprakash Leela, or the 21-hour exhibition of ecstasy, where the Lord is reminding devotees of things that they had forgotten. And he was showing not only his omniscience, but he's the one who came and saved them in that hour of difficulty from the spiritual world. I personally came. He is exhibiting. He had done this on previous occasions. Now it's for 21 hours. While circling back to a starting point, Krishna himself appearing in the mood of his own devotee to teach the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita by example, because there's two ways of learning things, by achar and by prachar, by word, prachar, by speaking it, and by example. So he taught by example how to take Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita and live it in, contemporary life, Kali Yuga. So he showed that as a devotee. But he sometimes, in this case, he flipped. And he flipped for purposes that he knows. One of those purposes is to drive away fear. The position of fearlessness, the position of fearlessness is beyond even peaceful, because you can be peaceful and here comes a threat. And what do you do when here comes a threat? You protect, you defend. So sometimes the devotees were feeling, in Navadvip, they were feeling fear. Like he's mentioning here with Gangadas, he was afraid that his daughters and his wife might be molested by these soldiers. And so he was wanting to get away and bring them to a position of safety. And there was no boat, and it was dark of night and great distress. He appealed to the Lord. The Lord came, protected him. So distress sometimes can be an impetus for taking deeper shelter, especially if one is pious. Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita. There are 4 types of pious people. Chatur vidha bhajantemam jana sukriti. Pious jana, pious people, sukriti jana, take shelter. One of them is there's distress. So when there's distress, it can be an impetus for taking deeper shelter. The distress looked like distress, but the opportunity to take deeper shelter can be arrangement by Krishna for his good souls, his good sons, to take deeper shelter of him, and then he's there. He's always there. He's always there. And he can make his appearance to give protection. So we have this one other example, especially relevant for this book. Chaitanya Bhagavata was written by Vrindavan Das, I mentioned that earlier, great devotee. And his mother was also a great devotee, Narayani. And when she was just 4 years old, how old are you? 8. How old are you? 4. When Narayani was 4 years old, Lord Chaitanya wanted to help Srivas become fearless. because Srivas had heard a rumor that was being spread around by the envious people. The king is coming with his soldiers, and he's going to destroy the whole of Navadvip and uproot the whole of Navadvip and tear down the buildings and throw it in the Ganges and cause harm for the Vaishnavas for this loud chanting. So to help Srivas feel fearless, he called for Narayani, the 4-year-old girl. What's your name? What's your name? Your name isn't Narayani, is it? Did you forget your name? Okay, well, we don't embarrass her. So Narayani was brought on the order of Mahaprabhu. And he ordered, Narayani, chant Krishna's name in ecstatic love of God. So immediately she burst out loudly calling Krishna's holy name. And tears came from her eyes profusely and crying and rolling on the ground in ecstatic love of Krishna. And Srivas said, okay. We're protected. You're the Supreme Lord. You can do anything. So sometimes he would manifest his divinity to help the devotees feel fearless. Now Krishna manifested his divinity sometimes, not exactly to make his devotees fearless. Well, when the inundation of Indra came, that was life-threatening. So he protected them, and they felt protected. Sure enough, they were protected because he's all-powerful. But in the case here, because it's such a nice part of the story, Sridhar wanted nothing. Material wealth, material fame, material beauty, material heavenly kingdom. I don't want these things. He honestly did. Mystic powers. I don't want these things. Now, many people undergo great austerities to get wealth, or yogis undergo great austerities to get mystic powers. Just take it. It's yours. I don't want. I just want loving exchanges with you, lifetime after lifetime. Take all my banana products that you like and tease me. That's what I want. Loving exchange is what I want. So this is instructive. Difficulty can come, and who's the exalted? One of the ways, I'll end with this. One of the ways to understand who an exalted devotee is how they deal with difficulty. This is one of the lessons. It's described in towards the 10th canto. When Bhrigu Muni is given the charge of other sages to find out who's greatest, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the conclusion is, Prabhupada writes in Krishna book, the greatness of a man can be understood how he deals with adversity. Because when there's no adversity, one can be great. When there's adversity, there's where you can really tell the greatness of a person. If they just remain equipoised, even in the greatest of calamity. Why and how? Because there's shelter. There's a happiness within that circumstance can't take away. We're hearing it now. I'm thinking of this for the third time. Yesterday evening, we had some nice discussion with the Houston Temple on verses by Lord Chaitanya on the chanting of the holy name. This message came out again. Then again this morning with devotees from Hyderabad ISKCON, because it was their evening, the day before Gaur Purnima, on the mission of Lord Chaitanya. But when one's heart is filled with the word that was being used by our acharyas is priti, by love, loving affection, or prema, the stage of love of God, loving service, there's nothing that can shake one. You can't be moved from a loving disposition towards the lovable object, no matter what. Not by allurements of something for enjoyment, nor on the other side by some difficulty or hardship or calamity or something. You're fixed, immovable. How? By being filled with by bliss. That's the word that's used, by bhava, devotional ecstasy, and that's Sridhar. And that's how the devotees were lifted, were raised by Lord Chaitanya through the medium of chanting the holy name to a stage of love of God. And from that stage of love of God, they became fearless. Not foolish, but they became fearless and felt protected. And they were. A nice pastime. We just went through one whole chapter. Lots of explanations. We'll continue again this evening. Let's see if there's some discussion. Did you like hearing this description? Yeah? Different, isn't it? She liked Krishna's pastimes, but now she's learning about Chaitanya's pastimes. Yes, Mahamantra?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. How Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu protected Gangadas Pandit. If he wanted, he would have stopped the king.
He said that too.
Oh,
He said that. He said all kinds of things. But in addition to his words, he demonstrated. You don't doubt. I can, anything. There's no limit.
yes. But I felt there is some sweetness in this.
There's lots of sweetness. Yeah, that's his pastimes. He came to inaugurate the Sankirtana.
Yes.
And with it, there are people that like it, and there are people that don't like it. And the people that don't like it can do different things when they don't like it. They can just say, I don't like it. Or they can do more severe things when they don't like it.
Maharaj. So I think what we learned is Srivas was so much, his bhav was there, so the fearlessness would, I think, automatically come. But, we are in Grasta life. We don't have that level of bhav, but we have so many things to fear about, our job, our children, their studies. How do we handle these day-to-day fears, and how we can be still peaceful while we are not at that level of bhav?
Jnana. Vairagya. That's the beginning. It's not, as long as, according to one of my favorite verses of the last 2 years, one of my favorite verses in the Bhagavatam, directly addresses your question. Bhayam, or fear, syat, arises from dvitiyam abhinivesh, absorption in duality, or in the bodily conception. So just put out the ironing board. As long as there's absorption in the bodily conception, there's going to be fear. Your question is, as long as I'm in the bodily conception, how do I handle fear? Well, an antidote to the bodily conception is a spiritual conception, or the antidote to ignorance is knowledge. So with knowledge comes detachment. Say it the opposite. Without knowledge, there won't be detachment. knowledge is not sufficient, because after some time, I'm feeling a little complacent in my knowledge program, and some fear arises again, because the conception of the temporary is all around us. It's been with us for who knows how many lifetimes. We're immersed in it. It's not just a matter, okay, I get it. Now I'm fearless. But it's a step. So then another step is right in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. First instruction Krishna gives is to tolerate. Tangsta tiksha svabharata. Tolerate what? Tolerate asat. What's asat? That which is temporary. Sat is not temporary, and asat is temporary. You tolerate it. If you tolerate it, what do you put your intelligence or you invest consciousness in sat, and it helps you to tolerate asat. Makes sense, right? Because if I'm absorbed in asat, what am I? That's your question. It's not how you said it. But when my bob isn't high enough and I'm experiencing distress and stuff, what do? Tolerate the asat and invest in sat. That's knowledge. Supposing I'm not really good at knowledge, well, you're going to struggle. And nobody likes to struggle. So then you're going to reach for what? You're going to reach for some straws when you're drowning in the ocean, and that's going to save you? That's not going to save you. So what are you going to reach for? When you recognize more temporary isn't going to help you. I can't take shelter of the temporary to get free from the fear and anxiety of the temporary. I need sat. I need sadhus, sadhu sangha that can help me become free from asat, my affinity for asat. That's something you can do. Seek sadhu sangha, just like what we're doing. These gatherings are for that purpose. Sadhu sangha. And then with sadhu sangha, there's hearing of transcendental knowledge, and transcendental knowledge is an antidote for ignorance. Knowledge is an antidote for ignorance. And when ignorance is dissipated, there goes the fear. And not only fear, everything else that's of the temporary realm. That we discussed just this morning class. Purity. Purity is freedom from false ego. And with false ego comes all the contaminants of material fear, greed, lust, anger, anxiety.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anyone else? If there isn't something else, maybe what we can do is we can go to the questions that were from this morning's class that we didn't have time for because our time was taken by ISKCON Hyderabad.
I just had a quick comment, Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
Well, thinking these pastimes are so moving to the heart. But I was thinking the Lord is also always doing something for us.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it may not be in his, personal form, but there's so much he's doing for us every day that we may not recognize. And yeah, my thoughts were just going to gratitude and the whole process of how one goes from a more neophyte stage to the Madhyam and the Uttam stage. What's the difference? The difference is that the Uttam is seeing Krishna's hand everywhere. And so the more we can see that hand of the Lord and become grateful, the more advancement can make. And one day, maybe the Lord will personally come.
That's a nice additional response to your question. Yeah. Okay.
There's one question here. It's from Dhananjayadu. Sometimes the fear of losing devotional service. Sometimes there's fear of losing devotional service. How one can overcome it?
In simple language, spiritual conception. Now, devotional service is intrinsic to the soul. Service is intrinsic to the soul. Even souls that are not engaged in service to Krishna, they're serving. Everyone, without exception, all living entities, not just human form, we're all serving. We're all serving. So devotional service is to serve the Lord. It's of the soul, so a spiritual conception can take away the fear of losing devotional service because it's of the soul. You can't lose it. But that what grows devotional service is sadhusanga. So cling, eagerly seek out and take advantage of whatever opportunities, golden opportunities, for devotee association, and you'll be protected from losing devotional service and protected from the fear of losing devotional service.
There's another question from Kriti Sandeep. Love is beautiful. Love is beautiful over love is good or not, Guruji?
This is from Hyderabad?
I don't know. No, this is not from Hyderabad. This is not from morning. This is from now.
It's from now.
Yeah. It's
So-
Kiriti Sandeep. I
This
think the
di-
question, yeah.
This devotee that just sent in his message, it sounds like a comment. If there's something that you want more than just providing a comment, please send in a clarification.
I think he's asking, love is beautiful. Is love good or not, Guruji? Over love. Oh, too much love. Oh, okay.
Too much love is what?
Good or not?
Too much. Well, too much of anything is not good, but what's too much of too much love? That's, if it's real love, then it's never too much. Like that's the residents of Vrindavan, too much. They love Krishna too much. They should love him less. That's not the correct statement. But love that's that's materially tinged or materially based means, attachment. Material attachment, not exactly what love really is. So back, if it's real love, it's never too much, and if it's not, then it can be too much.
Okay, this is from morning. Hema Suryavamshi. My current situation is that I am not doing much in my spiritual practices due to some circumstances and my less commitment. So now, what is the least and smallest thing which I can do for the pleasure of Lord Chaitanya on this coming festival?
Take prasadam. She has something she wants to add. Where's the little...
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Towards the end of the read, there were a few lines that really touched my heart. And one of the lines was that externally a devotee may be feeling distress, but internally he's feeling the spiritual bliss. I don't remember exactly, but something in those lines. And also that we cannot judge a Vaishnav externally.
Yeah.
If you could kindly expand. On that.
Well, what I recall was a little different than what you recalled the first part, but I would just go with the first part because the first part is also true. That is, when a devotee, now what we're meaning is not like a neophyte, but someone who's mature in their devotion, they may be passing through some difficulty, undeniably passing through some difficulty. At the same time, when passing through the difficulty, it's something a little bit like what Prema Tarangani had to say, that is, I can see Krishna's hand because I'm a devotee. The difficulty is difficult, but I can see Krishna's hand in this, or at least I have full faith that Krishna's hand in this, and on the other side, there's Krishna's embrace. It's we read this yesterday, that Krishna says to the gopis, sometimes I don't immediately respond to the request of my devotees, but it's not because of neglect. It's to have them increase their dependence and love for me. Because it's not, the essence is not what one gets or doesn't get. The essence is the relationship. And when there is a genuine relationship, whether one gets or doesn't get is not so important. The relationship is important. So when one is passing through, back to what you said, one is a devotee passing through some distress, it is commonly seen as an impetus by the devotee. This is a fantastic opportunity for me to become less dependent on the temporary and more dependent upon my love, my relationship of love. So in the mature stage, it is love. And then that's everything. It can be this or it can be that. The essence is that loving relationship. So a devotee is not disturbed by the difficulty, because their shelter is not whether it's this side of duality or that side of duality, good fortune or ill fortune, misfortune. It's the essence is the relationship. The relationship isn't defined by good fortune or misfortune. The relationship is the relationship. Now let me read what the language was here. There's more Mahaprakash Leela coming up this evening. Who has the ability to recognize a Vaishnava? Although a Vaishnava possesses all perfection, he appears to be afflicted. The story of Sridhar, the banana seller, is proof of this, for he accepted only devotional service and rejected the 8 mystic perfections. Know for certain that whatever worldly distress is seen in a Vaishnava is actually spiritual happiness. That was the language. So you want me to hear some expanding on that? Yeah. A very different response to that is it's again resting upon the relationship with Krishna. And the relationship with Krishna has 5 primary rasas. And then over here there's 7 secondary rasas. And of the 7 secondary rasas, there may be one of those 7 secondary rasas is translated as sorrow. So when we see sorrow, it looks sad. But when it's resting upon and nourishing one of the primary rasas is actually ecstasy. This is a teaching of Rupa Goswami, which is being said here. To me, at least one way to read what's being said is that. For me, a really wonderful lesson I learned came from Ramayana and the section in Ayodhya Kanda where Ram is sent to the forest. And everyone is sorrow, 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 sorrow. But it's actually striking their hearts, that this misfortune is striking their hearts in a certain way that makes them feel sorrow, but it's just nourishing their primary rasa. It's a secondary rasa that nourishes the primary rasa. It strengthens the primary rasa. And different persons. I mean, Dasrath died. But, that's an ecstasy. That doesn't look like ecstasy. Somebody died. But it's an intensification of love through misfortune. So it's actually an ecstasy. Blissful. As one is passing through it, just like, let's say, the gopis, Krishna's leaving Vrindavan. In Brihat Bhagavatamrita, one section I like, Narada is describing this to Gopakumar, and he is describing that pastime. And he says, actually, Vaishnavas don't like to speak about this pastime because it's too horrible. People may think, oh gosh, if I take shelter of Krishna, I'll have to pass through that. I'm not going to be. But once he starts to speak about it, there's verse after verse after verse, because it's actually ecstatic. It's Krishna's in heightening the attachment of not only the gopis, the gopas and the elderly and Nanda and Jasoda, and striking their hearts in different ways. And their love for Krishna is just being heightened like anything. It's an ecstasy. And then he leaves. And according to Brihat Bhagavatamrita, he comes back. And they forgot everything about his having left. And then the other is, you can't tell a Vaishnava by the outside, but you know that. The learned person can actually be a fool, and the one that's not so learned can actually be highly illuminated, highly elevated in realization through their devotion.
This is from Manish Keswani. He says, I've tested COVID positive and I'm suffering. How should I continue my devotional life in this isolation period?
Do online. Join the party. There's so much sadhu sangha available that way these days, more than post-COVID or pre-COVID. It's different. It's not the same, but it's what's available. So take advantage of what's available. You have any question? You usually have a nice question. She has one question.
Should I finish this?
Yeah, finish. We'll come back to you, okay?
There's just one more here.
Okay.
Just a very quick comment from Taruni, Terry Devine.
Yeah.
She just says, very nice class, Hare Krishna, for the
Okay.
morning. And then Amara, Hare Krishna Maharaj, from my little experience in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, it's very attractive when we are getting to know new things from the Shastras about merciful nature of Krishna, many beautiful stories, etc. After a few years, there comes a time when we want to get closer to Krishna and understand that purity is the qualification. At that time, it feels like it is going pretty slow, and many anarthas are lingering in a sticky way. It's a struggle, but as you kindly said, Sadhu Sangha is a big support during this phase. For our new members, perhaps similar phases will be there, how can we help them such that they do not stray away when they're done with initial phases of new attraction to Krishna conscious literature? How can we encourage them for associating with sadhus?
Well, best is have genuine relationships with such persons, persons in general, or such persons. And so when one is being pulled by whatever force is pulling them, they'll want to stay in association because we all like relationships. We want friends and warm, affectionate relationships. So be that kind of person, and that's will help. It's not a guarantee, but it's certainly going to help. You ready? Okay, here comes Bhakta Mike.
So my question is, Lord Chaitanya got married. So I don't think in the Vedic scriptures it says that we should get married.
Say it again. Take the mask down. Maybe I can hear you better.
So in the Vedic scriptures it says that we shouldn't get married, but
In the Vedic scriptures, it says that a girl should get married.
no, it says that if you want to be a devotee, you shouldn't develop material attachment. So if you get married, then that means that you shouldn't get married. So
That's not what it means.
okay.
Not what it means. And I'm surprised you're thinking about this at age. The teaching is tendencies, like you like to eat, right?
Yes.
We all like to eat. So it's not don't eat, but don't overeat. And eat Krishna Prasadam. But don't overeat, even if it's Krishna Prasadam. So that's easy to understand, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now supposing there's some affinity for music. Now, some people like music. I know some people that like music. You like music?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not don't do music because that's material. It's you do music that's for the pleasure of Krishna, but don't neglect your homework. Just doing lots of music. Take care of all the responsibilities of life and dedicate the music part to Krishna. So same with male and female attraction. Gosh, it's people don't have to go to school to learn birds and cats and dogs and you name it. All the species of life, that male-female attraction is there. So what do you do if there's male-female attraction? It's you engage in that activity in a regulated way under the guidance of the Vedas. The Vedas don't say don't get married. It says the Vedas say live religious marriage. And what's that? So it's described in the Vedas. And you dedicate that to Krishna service. So just like eating or music, you dedicate that natural affinity to service to Krishna. Now, if you didn't have to eat at all, that's great. But you do have to eat, so you eat something, but you eat Krishna Prasadam. So it's certainly possible that one can live a life without being married. I'm an example. I'm not dead, but I'm very alive. But not married, and I'm very happy. So be happy, and understand what the standard of happiness is. It's not indulging in eating or indulging the senses in too much eating. It's you engage in that which is natural in service to Krishna, and without undue attachment to it. That's a longer answer. Short answer is no problem. You dedicate that institute of marriage in service to Krishna. And then it's fine. You're not in. And if you can do without it, that's fine too. Even better. Save you a lot of trouble. Want to sign up?
Yes.
Okay, we'll see. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. You have something else?
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Or I think we're done. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.